Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Speak Up podcast, the place where English learners from around the world come to build real confidence and fluency. Whether this is your first time listening or you've been with us for a while, we're glad you're here. Let me start with a quick thought. Have you ever been in a conversation, trying your best to speak English, and felt like something was missing? Like you knew the words, but the message didn't land the way you wanted. Maybe you paused too much or your sentences felt a little off. That's more common than you think. Today, we're talking about something that can really change the way you speak. The topic is 10 English communication skills you need to know. These are not random tips. They're real, practical skills that fluent speakers use naturally. And once you start applying them, your English will sound smoother, more confident, and a lot more natural.
That's right, Ryan. Today's episode is all about helping you communicate better. Not just speak English, but actually connect, express yourself, and respond naturally. These 10 communication skills are the building blocks of fluent speaking. We're not diving into complicated grammar rules or textbook-style lessons. Instead, we're focusing on things that you can actually use. Things like how to structure your thoughts, how to use your voice more effectively, how to listen and respond without hesitation, and how to keep your speech flowing even when you're unsure of the exact words. So if you've ever felt stuck while speaking, or like your English sounds a little flat or robotic, this episode is for you. We're going to break everything down in a simple way, step by step. And by the end of this conversation, you'll have a clear picture of what to focus on next.
Let's jump right into skill number 1, which is all about using the right words, not just any words. This is called precision in vocabulary. A lot of learners speak in general terms. They use words like thing, stuff, good or bad, and while that might be okay sometimes, it often makes your message unclear. For example, instead of saying, I bought some stuff, you could say, I bought groceries, or I bought some clothes. See the difference? It's more specific, and it helps the other person understand you instantly.
Yes, and one of the fastest ways to sound more fluent is to choose words that are closer to your actual meaning. Let's say you want to describe your day. Instead of saying, it was a good day, you can say, it was a productive day, or it was a relaxing day. These small changes add color and detail to your speech, and people naturally pay more attention when your words are more precise. It also helps you build stronger conversations because your listener doesn't have to guess what you mean.
That's a really important point, Priya, and I think learners sometimes avoid specific words because they're afraid of making mistakes. But the truth is, the more you practice using topic-specific words, the easier it gets. You don't have to use complicated vocabulary, just accurate vocabulary. For example, if you're talking about cooking, try using words like ingredients, recipe, boil, or grill, instead of saying, I did some food stuff. Be direct and let your words match the topic.
Exactly. And another layer of this is using context-appropriate vocabulary. That means knowing when to use formal words and when it's okay to be casual. If you're in a job interview, you might say, I'm confident in my ability to manage projects. But if you're talking to a friend, you might just say, pretty good at organizing things. Same idea, different tone. So precision isn't just about the word itself, it's also about choosing the right tone for the situation.
Right. And one great way to practice this is by picking a common topic and building vocabulary around it. Let's take health, for example. You can list out words like symptoms, medicine, appointment, recovery, and checkup. Then use them in simple sentences like, I booked a doctor's appointment, or I'm still recovering from the flu. This helps you speak more clearly and also trains your brain to be more specific without overthinking.
And when you get used to that, you'll notice a huge improvement in how people respond to you. When your vocabulary is specific, people understand you faster, and that boosts your confidence. You're not pausing to explain or repeating yourself. You say it once, and it lands. Also, practicing with flashcards or topic-based word lists can be helpful. Just make sure you're using words you can actually apply in real situations, not just memorizing fancy words you'll never use.
That's such a great point. A lot of learners chase difficult words thinking it'll make them sound advanced. But communication is not about sounding fancy, it's about being understood. So focus on clarity. Use words that match your idea directly. If you're describing your mood, don't just say, I feel bad. Say, I feel tired. I feel frustrated, or I feel overwhelmed. These are the kinds of small vocabulary upgrades that instantly make your English more powerful.
Absolutely. Precision in vocabulary is one of those skills that builds over time, but you can start right now with just one sentence. After this episode, try picking one thing you did today and describe it in 5 specific words, not general ones. You'll be surprised how quickly you improve. And up next, we'll talk about a skill that connects your words together so your speech sounds smooth, not choppy, and most learners don't even know they're missing it.
Now let's talk about skill number 2, sentence framing with logic and flow. One major thing that separates fluent speakers from struggling ones is the ability to express complete thoughts clearly. A lot of learners speak in broken fragments. They might say, "Went outside, very hot, no umbrella." While we can guess what they mean, it doesn't sound complete or natural. English works best when your ideas are structured, so instead of fragments, try saying, "I went outside and it was really hot. I forgot to bring my umbrella." That small shift makes your message easier to follow and much more fluent.
That's so true. And it doesn't mean you need to speak in long, complicated sentences. Even simple ones can be powerful when they're complete and connected. Think of this like building blocks. Each sentence should have a subject, a verb, and a clear idea. For example, instead of saying not ready, say, "I'm not ready because I haven't finished my work yet." You're giving the listener everything they need to understand you fully. When your sentences are framed well, the conversation flows more naturally and you don't get stuck searching for what to say next.
Another thing to look out for is something called run-on sentences, where people try to say everything in one long breath without stopping. For instance, I wanted to go shopping, but then I got hungry and I met a friend and we had coffee and then I came home. That's a lot to take in. A better way is to break that up. I wanted to go shopping, then I got hungry and ran into a friend, we had coffee, and after that I came home. That's easier to follow and it gives your listener time to process each idea before moving to the next.
Yes, and one really effective way to frame your sentences more clearly is to use sentence starters that organize your thoughts. Phrases like, "The reason I think that is because," or "One thing I noticed is," help guide your speech in a more structured way. They're especially useful when you want to express opinions or explain something step by step. These small tools help you stay on track, and they also give your listener a clear signal that you're about to explain something. You don't need to memorize dozens of these, just a few good ones you can use often.
One of my favorite speaking habits is to choose a simple topic from my day and explain it in 3 full sentences out loud. For example, "I didn't sleep well last night. I kept waking up because of the noise outside. I feel a little tired today." That's simple, but it has structure. There's a cause, an effect, and a feeling. You're not just saying random thoughts, you're telling a clear story. Practicing like this helps train your mind to frame ideas in a smooth, logical order, and over time, your speech starts to sound more natural without needing to think too hard.
That's a great practice. And the best part is, you can do it anytime, while walking, cooking, or even just thinking quietly. Whenever a thought pops into your head, try to form a full sentence in English. This helps you move away from translating word by word and start actually thinking in sentence form. The more you do this, the more fluent your sentences become. It's not just about knowing words. It's about putting them together in a way that makes sense and flows naturally. That's what makes your English sound confident and easy to follow.
It also helps you stay calm during conversations. When your sentences have a beginning, middle, and end, people don't interrupt you as much because they can feel that your message is clear and complete. You're in control of what you're saying, and that builds confidence. Even when you're unsure of the right word, you can still frame a solid sentence around it. For example, if you forget the word appointment, you can say, "I need to go see the doctor tomorrow." It still works. Framing helps you move forward without getting stuck on one word.
Yes, and once this becomes a habit, you'll notice that your sentences automatically sound smoother and more professional, even if you're just talking about daily things. Like instead of saying, lunch good, you'll say, I really enjoyed lunch today. The food was fresh and tasty. It's not about being perfect. It's about expressing yourself in full, natural thoughts. And the more you focus on this, the easier it becomes to have real conversations in English without feeling lost or unsure of what to say.
Let's move into skill number 3, which is all about strategic listening. Not just hearing words, but listening with purpose. A lot of people focus so much on what they're going to say next, they completely miss what the other person just said. Listening in English isn't only about understanding the words, it's about catching the key points, the tone, and the intention behind them. If someone says, I guess I'm fine, the tone tells you they're probably not. So strategic listening means paying attention, not just to what's said, but how it's said.
Exactly. And when you listen that way, your responses become more natural. You don't feel the need to translate everything in your head because you're reacting to meaning, not just grammar. One reason many learners hesitate while replying is because they're too focused on forming the perfect sentence instead of truly listening first. But if you train yourself to listen for the main idea and the emotion behind it, your brain starts preparing natural responses automatically. It becomes more like a real conversation and less like a school exercise.
One great way to develop this skill is something called mirror and paraphrase practice. Here's how it works. After listening to someone, whether it's in a video, podcast, or real life, pause for a moment and try to repeat the idea in your own words. For example, if someone says, I didn't enjoy the movie because the plot was too slow, you can mirror it by saying, oh, so you felt bored because the story moved too slowly. This helps you check your understanding, and it also trains you to respond more naturally in real time.
That's such a useful exercise. And the beauty is, you can practice it alone too. Just play a short English clip, pause after one sentence, and try to say the same thing in a different way. For example, if the speaker says, he canceled the meeting at the last minute, you can say, he decided not to have the meeting right before it was supposed to happen. You're not just listening passively. You're training your ear and your brain to process ideas in English, which makes responding so much easier when you're actually speaking.
And when you make this a habit, it also helps you avoid awkward silences in real conversations. You'll be more prepared to answer smoothly because your brain is already used to finding the meaning quickly. You don't need to translate every word. Instead, your mind starts working in English patterns. That's what fluency really is. Not knowing every word, but being able to understand and respond naturally. Strategic listening is one of the most powerful habits you can build if you want to speak with confidence.
Yes, and one more benefit of strategic listening is that it actually improves your pronunciation too. When you listen carefully to how native speakers stress words, pause, or change their tone, you start to mimic those patterns without even realizing it. Over time, your speaking becomes smoother and more expressive just from listening with intention. So it's not just about hearing the message, it's about absorbing the rhythm and flow of real English speech. That's something textbooks just can't teach.
Another thing that helps is paying attention to what kind of responses people give. For example, when someone says, that sounds interesting, what do they usually say next? They might ask a follow-up question or share their own experience. Notice those patterns. It gives you a better sense of how real conversations move forward. You'll stop worrying about what to say and start reacting naturally because you've seen those patterns before. That's what makes listening strategic. You're not just receiving sound, you're learning how to use it.
That's the key, listening with a purpose. Whether you're watching a movie, listening to a podcast, or having a short conversation, try to listen with the goal of responding, not just understanding. Ask yourself, what is the speaker really trying to say? How would I respond to this? How can I paraphrase it in my own words? That kind of listening makes your English more active, more flexible, and more real. And once you start doing it regularly, you'll be surprised at how quickly your speaking improves too.
Let's move on to skill number 4, voice modulation, tone, and clarity.
When we speak in English, it's not just the words we use that matter, it's how we say them. You might have the right sentence, but if you say everything in a flat tone with no energy or emotion, it can sound dull or even confusing. That's called speaking in a monotone. Fluent speakers use natural ups and downs in their voice. We call this intonation to keep the listener interested and to show what's important in a sentence. It's something that gives your English real life.
Yes, and voice modulation also helps you express different meanings with the same words. For example, think of the sentence, "You really did that?" Now, if you say it with a rising tone, it sounds surprised. If you say it with a flat tone, it might sound annoyed. The words didn't change, just the tone did. That's why how you speak makes such a big difference. If you want to sound fluent, it's not about speed. It's about sounding natural. And that comes from adjusting your voice to match what you're feeling or trying to say.
A really useful way to practice this is by playing with emphasis. Try reading a sentence out loud and change which word you stress. Take the sentence, "I didn't say he stole the money." If you stress different words, "I didn't say he stole the money," or "I didn't say he stole the money," it completely changes the meaning. Practicing like this helps you become more aware of your tone and how it affects the message. It also trains your ear to notice this in native speech, which improves your listening too.
That's such a great example. Another helpful thing is to slow down slightly when you're speaking. Not too much, but just enough so your voice can rise and fall naturally. Many learners rush through their sentences, and that often leads to a flat, unclear tone. But when you slow down a little and give each part of the sentence some space, your voice naturally becomes clearer and more expressive. And clarity doesn't mean sounding robotic. It means sounding confident and easy to understand, even if your sentences are simple.
Right, and don't forget that your tone also shows your attitude. If you're excited, curious, or serious, your voice should reflect that. That's what makes conversations feel real. If you're explaining something, raise your tone slightly to highlight the main point. If you're asking a question, let your voice rise at the end. These small shifts make a big difference. Speaking clearly isn't just about pronunciation, it's also about delivering your message with purpose. When your tone matches your words, your English feels more natural and more believable.
Exactly. And if you feel unsure about how your voice sounds, try recording yourself. Pick a short paragraph, read it out loud, and listen back. Are you using any emphasis? Does your voice sound flat or lively? This simple exercise helps you hear the difference and improve over time. You can also listen to podcasts or YouTube videos in English and mimic the speaker's tone, not just their words. That's called intonation practice, and it's one of the most effective ways to sound more fluent and expressive when you speak.
Another tip is to think of your voice like a tool. You can raise it slightly when you want to sound excited, lower it when you want to sound serious, and soften it when you're expressing something gentle or calm. This kind of variety keeps your listener engaged and also gives you more control over how your message is received. It's especially useful in presentations or professional conversations. Even if your grammar isn't perfect, good voice control can make your English feel polished and strong.
And remember, your goal isn't to sound like someone else. It's to make your English sound clear, natural, and confident in your voice. Don't worry if it feels strange at first. Most people don't pay attention to their tone until they really start practicing it. But once you do, it becomes a habit. The more you focus on modulating your voice, the better your English will sound, not just to others, but to yourself as well.
So far, we've seen how important it is to choose the right words, build clear sentences, listen with purpose, and speak with the right tone. Now let's talk about skill number 5, using discourse markers and transitional devices. These are small words or phrases like actually, in other words, on the other hand, or to be honest. And they play a huge role in making your speech sound more fluent and connected. Without them, your ideas can feel like random pieces, but with them, your message flows naturally, like a real conversation.
Yes, and they help your listener follow your thinking more easily. Imagine someone just listing ideas with no connection. I like movies. My friend came over. We ate food. It feels disconnected. But if you say, I like movies. In fact, my friend came over yesterday and we watched one together. After that, we ordered food. It flows so much better. These small phrases create bridges between your ideas. They guide your listener through your thoughts, showing when you're adding something, changing direction, or explaining something in a new way.
And the best part is, these phrases are not hard to learn. You don't need a long list. Just a few common ones can make a big difference. For example, first of all, by the way, that being said, or as a result. You can use them to start new points, compare things, give examples, or introduce a conclusion. They also give you a second to think while you're speaking, which helps reduce hesitation. So not only do you sound more fluent, but you also feel more in control of what you're saying.
And these markers also make your tone more natural, more like how native speakers talk. For instance, when someone says, "To be honest, I didn't enjoy that movie," it softens the criticism and sounds polite. Or if you say, "On the other hand, some people might disagree," it shows you're looking at both sides of an idea. These phrases are not just decoration, they show attitude, contrast, agreement, disagreement, and more. That's why they're so important for real communication, especially in conversations or presentations.
You can also use discourse markers to help clarify your meaning when you feel like your point wasn't clear enough. For example, if you say something and then feel like your listener didn't get it, you can add, "in other words," and then explain it again in a simpler way. That's something fluent speakers do all the time. It shows that you're aware of the conversation and adjusting as needed. And it helps your listeners stay with you, especially if you're discussing something slightly complex or new.
Another smart use is when you want to organize your ideas more clearly. Let's say you're sharing your opinion on a topic. You can start with firstly, then move to secondly, and finally, lastly. Or if you're comparing two things, you can use however or in contrast. These phrases tell your listener what's coming next. That way, your speech doesn't just sound like a string of sentences. It sounds structured and thoughtful. And again, you don't need to overdo it. Just sprinkle them in naturally where it makes sense.
A good way to practice is by recording yourself talking about a topic and trying to add at least 3 different markers while you speak. For example, actually, I used to dislike reading, but over time, I found books I enjoyed. On the other hand, I still prefer watching movies when I'm tired. You're connecting your ideas and giving your speech a rhythm. Without those phrases, it would sound flat. With them, it becomes more engaging and easier to follow, which is exactly what fluency is all about.
So if you've ever felt like your speaking sounds choppy or disconnected, this might be one of the easiest skills to fix. Just start with a few simple discourse markers and build from there. Pay attention to how people use them in interviews, podcasts, or everyday conversations. And don't worry about being perfect. It's more important to sound connected and clear than to be 100% formal. These little words can do a lot of work when used well, and they're a big part of sounding fluent in real conversation.
Let's move on to skill number 6, which is one of the most powerful mindset shifts for fluency, learning to think in English. A lot of learners still rely on mentally translating from their first language into English, and that slows everything down. When you translate word by word, your brain gets stuck between 2 languages. You're trying to understand, build a sentence, and speak all at once. That's why some people know the words but still hesitate when it's time to talk. Thinking in English removes that extra step and makes speaking much faster and smoother.
Exactly. And the good news is you don't have to be fluent already to start thinking in English. It starts with small steps. One simple practice is object labeling. Just look around you and name the things in English. Chair, window, notebook, cup of tea. The more you train your brain to connect the object directly with the English word, the less you'll need to translate in the future. Over time, you'll stop thinking, "This is a kitab. Oh, that's book in English." You'll just think, "book," automatically. That's what real progress feels like.
Another great technique is doing short internal monologues in English throughout your day. For example, while getting ready, say in your mind, "I need to brush my teeth, then make breakfast. What should I wear today?" These small thoughts, even if they're silent, help train your brain to process daily routines in English. You don't need to be perfect, just consistent. You're creating a habit where English becomes the first language your brain uses to plan, decide, and observe. That's a major step toward fluency.
Yes, and one more fun method is using quick decision games. Set a timer for 30 seconds and give yourself a task like, describe this room in English, or list 5 things you did today. Try to do it without pausing or translating. It's okay to make small mistakes. The point is to train your brain to respond quickly in English. These little exercises build mental speed. And just like training a muscle, the more often you do it, the stronger and faster your language thinking becomes.
It's also important to be patient with this process. Thinking in English won't happen overnight, but if you stay consistent, you'll start noticing small wins. For example, one day you might realize you read a full sentence or understood a thought without translating it. That's a big achievement. It means your brain is starting to treat English as a natural language, not a school subject. And the more this happens, the less nervous you feel when it's time to speak because your thoughts are already in the right language.
And don't worry if you don't know how to say something perfectly in your head. Just say it simply. Instead of thinking, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed doing my workload, you can say, I'm tired because there's too much work. The key is to keep the English flowing in your mind, even if it's basic. As your vocabulary grows, your inner sentences will grow too. But what matters most is staying in English mode, no switching back and forth. That's how fluency is built from the inside out.
You can also connect this habit with your surroundings. For example, when you walk outside, try describing what you see in your head. The weather is cloudy. A man is walking his dog. There's a red car turning left. This kind of quiet narration turns your daily life into practice time. It's simple, but it keeps your brain active in English. Over time, when you're in a real conversation, the words will come faster because you've already trained your mind to think and describe in English.
And one final reminder, thinking in English is more about mental discipline than talent. You don't need a perfect accent or advanced grammar to start. You just need to build that internal habit of using English when you're thinking, planning, or reacting to situations. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day makes a difference. With time, you'll notice your thoughts becoming more automatic, your speech flowing more easily, and your confidence growing naturally because your brain is finally working with the language, not against it.
Let's move on to skill number 7, which is called controlled repetition and shadowing practice. This technique is incredibly powerful for improving intonation, pacing, word stress, and pronunciation, all in one. Shadowing means you listen to a short piece of native English audio and immediately repeat what you hear, trying to match the tone, speed, and rhythm as closely as possible. It's not just about repeating the words, it's about copying the way they're said. That's what makes it different from regular repetition.
Yes, and this practice helps your mouth, ears, and brain work together. When you shadow correctly, you're training yourself to speak more like a native without needing to think about each rule. You start picking up the natural music of English, how certain words are stressed, how intonation rises and falls, and where to pause. That's something textbooks rarely teach, but it makes a big difference in how fluent you sound. Shadowing gives you that feeling of rhythm that fluent speakers naturally have.
A simple way to start is with a 10-minute daily shadowing routine. Choose a clear English clip, maybe from a podcast, movie, or YouTube video. Play one sentence, pause, and then repeat it out loud, matching the speaker's delivery as closely as you can. Focus on how they speak, not just what they say. Then replay your version and compare it with the original. This is your feedback loop. It helps you catch areas where your tone or stress was off. That's how real improvement happens, by noticing, correcting, and repeating.
And it's okay if you don't sound perfect at first. In fact, that's part of the process. The goal is not to copy an accent, it's to develop a more natural flow in your speaking. Start with shorter clips, even just 30 seconds, and work your way up. Over time, you'll notice that certain sentence patterns and intonation styles start to become automatic. And because you've practiced them out loud so often, they'll come out easily when you're in real conversations. Shadowing is like vocal training. The more consistent you are, the more fluent you'll sound.
Another benefit of shadowing is that it improves your listening and speaking at the same time. When you shadow, you're not just speaking blindly, you're actively listening for how a native speaker emphasizes certain syllables, when they speed up or slow down, and how they connect words naturally. For example, instead of saying, I am going to, a native speaker might say, I'm gonna. Shadowing helps you absorb those real-life patterns, so your English sounds more current, not overly textbook or robotic.
That's so true, and another tip is to choose audio content that fits your level. If it's too fast or too advanced, you might get frustrated. Start with clear speakers who use everyday English, and once you feel comfortable, you can challenge yourself with faster or more complex speech. Over time, your ears get better at picking up details, and your tongue gets better at producing them. Shadowing works because it turns passive input into active output. You're not just listening, you're practicing the exact same patterns.
Also, don't forget to focus on emotion and delivery style while shadowing. If the speaker sounds excited, try to match that energy. If they sound serious or calm, reflect that tone too. This helps you sound more engaging and natural, not flat. You're learning to speak with feeling, which is just as important as grammar or vocabulary. And when your delivery has emotion, people enjoy listening to you more, whether you're telling a story, sharing an opinion, or just having a casual chat.
And the best part is, this technique doesn't require hours of practice. Just 10 minutes focused a day can make a big impact. Over time, shadowing builds confidence, sharpens pronunciation, and trains your ear to hear English the way fluent speakers do. It's one of those practices that feels difficult at first, but quickly becomes your secret weapon for sounding fluent. So if you haven't added this to your routine yet, now is the perfect time to start. Even a few minutes a day will lead to noticeable improvement.
Let's talk about skill number 8, which is something almost every learner struggles with: framing responses under pressure. You know those moments when someone asks you a question in English and your brain just freezes? That's completely normal. But the trick isn't to always have the perfect answer ready, it's to use simple framing strategies that give you time to think. For example, saying, "That's a good question. Let me think about it for a second," gives you a few seconds to breathe and organize your thoughts. It shows confidence and keeps the conversation going.
Yes, and that small pause can make a huge difference. Many learners feel they need to answer immediately or they'll look weak, but actually, native speakers buy time all the time with phrases like, "Well, I'm not totally sure, but I think," or, let me see." These phrases give your brain space while still sounding natural. It's better to use a filler sentence than to stay silent or panic. With practice, you'll notice that these small response tools help you stay calm and sound fluent, even if you don't have a full answer right away.
And it's not just about buying time, it's also about having response templates ready for different situations. If you agree with someone but want to sound a little more advanced, you can say, "I see your point," or "I totally agree with that." If you want to disagree politely, you might say, "I understand what you mean, but I have a slightly different view." These phrases aren't complicated, but they instantly make your replies more structured. You don't need to come up with new words every time, you just plug your ideas into the right frame.
That's a smart way to approach it. Another useful frame is for uncertainty. If you don't know the answer to something, instead of freezing or saying nothing, you can say, "I'm not completely sure, but maybe," or "That's something I need to check." It keeps the conversation flowing while still being honest. These kinds of responses are very natural and often used even by fluent speakers. They protect your confidence while still showing engagement. It's not about pretending you know everything. It's about responding smoothly, no matter the situation.
And it's not just about buying time, it's also about having response templates ready for different situations. If you agree with someone but want to sound a little more advanced, you can say, "I see your point," or "I totally agree with that." If you want to disagree politely, you might say, "I understand what you mean, but I have a slightly different view."
These phrases aren't complicated, but they instantly make your replies more structured. You don't need to come up with new words every time, you just plug your ideas into the right frame.
That's a smart way to approach it. Another useful frame is for uncertainty. If you don't know the answer to something, instead of freezing or saying nothing, you can say, "I'm not completely sure, but maybe," or "That's something I need to check." It keeps the conversation flowing while still being honest. These kinds of responses are very natural and often used even by fluent speakers. They protect your confidence while still showing engagement. It's not about pretending you know everything. It's about responding smoothly, no matter the situation.
One great way to practice this is through mini simulations. Imagine someone's asking you questions at a job interview, or you're in a group discussion. Try answering using frames like, "I think the main reason is," or "From my point of view." It's practicing like this that helps build the habit of framing. So when real situations come, your mind already knows how to begin. You'll stop panicking and start feeling more in control because you're not searching for every single word. You're using reliable tools to guide your response.
Yes, and framing is also helpful when you feel nervous. If you get stuck, you can say, "I just lost my train of thought. Let me come back to that." That sounds calm and professional, not awkward. You don't have to push through every sentence in a rush. Sometimes it's the way you recover that shows your confidence, and framing gives you that support. With a few well-practiced expressions, you can sound composed even under pressure, in interviews, meetings, group discussions, or even casual chats.
It also helps you avoid overthinking. When you know you have solid phrases to fall back on, your brain doesn't panic as much. You're not trying to create a perfect sentence every time. You're using a structure to guide your speech. That gives you room to focus on your message instead of your fear. Whether you're agreeing, disagreeing, or unsure, if you have the right frame, your reply will always sound thoughtful. And that's really what fluency is, not speed, but being able to respond with clarity and confidence.
Exactly. So if you've ever frozen in a conversation or said something awkward just to break the silence, try preparing a few go-to responses in advance. Practice them out loud. Get comfortable with how they sound. Over time, they'll become second nature. You'll stop worrying about what to say and start responding with purpose. These framing skills are the secret sauce to fluent, real-time communication. And once you have them, your English will feel a lot more natural in pressure situations.
Now let's talk about skill number 9, which often gets overlooked, the controlled use of fillers. Fillers are words like, you know, I mean, actually, or like. When used properly, they can make you sound more natural and fluent because native speakers use them all the time in everyday conversations. They help soften statements, buy time thinking, or create a relaxed tone. For example, saying, "I mean, it was kind of unexpected," sounds more conversational than just saying, "It was unexpected." Fillers add a human touch when used with control.
Yes, and the key word here is control. While fillers can help you sound more relaxed and fluent, overusing them can make your speech unclear or even distracting. If every sentence starts with "like" or ends with "you know," the message gets lost. Listeners start focusing on the filler words instead of your ideas. So it's important to use them intentionally, not out of nervous habit. Think of fillers like seasoning in food. Just a little can enhance the flavor, but too much can ruin the dish.
A good way to check your filler use is to record yourself while speaking freely about a topic. Then listen back and count how often you say or like or you know. Most people are surprised by how often it happens, sometimes without even realizing it. That's why awareness is the first step. Once you notice the pattern, you can start adjusting. Instead of filling silence with try pausing briefly. A short pause can actually make you sound more thoughtful and confident than filling space with unnecessary words.
And another trick is to replace filler habits with framing tools we talked about earlier. So instead of saying, like, "I think it's good," you could say, "From my point of view, it's a good option. It's clearer and still gives you a second to think." The goal isn't to remove fillers completely. Even fluent speakers use them, but to make sure they're not covering up hesitation or interrupting your flow. When you use fillers sparingly and purposefully, they become a tool for fluent and relatable speech, not a sign of nervousness.
And fillers also vary depending on tone and setting. In casual conversations, using you know or I guess can make you sound more friendly or approachable. But in more formal settings, like interviews or presentations, it's better to keep fillers minimal and speak with more direct phrases. So part of fluency is not just knowing the words, but also knowing when to use them appropriately. That kind of awareness shows you're not only comfortable in English, but you also understand how to adjust your communication based on the situation.
Exactly. And don't be afraid of small silences in your speech. They're not mistakes. They give your listener time to absorb what you've said. In fact, fluent speakers often pause for effect or to organize their thoughts. The challenge is not to fill every gap with or like, but to let your ideas breathe. So when you do use a filler, let it come naturally, not out of habit. That way, your speech sounds relaxed but still clear and intentional, which is exactly what we want.
Another helpful way to practice is through shadowing, but this time pay attention specifically to how native speakers use fillers. Notice how they insert actually to correct themselves, or say, you know, when making a shared point. Try mimicking those moments, not just the words. Over time, you'll develop an ear for which fillers sound natural and which ones feel repetitive. That awareness helps you speak more smoothly while staying in control of your message, which is really what fluency is all about.
Yes, and one last thing, fillers aren't a weakness if they're used with care. They're part of natural speech in every language. The difference is whether you're using them as a tool or a crutch. So if you want your English to sound more fluent and conversational, practice using fillers in the right places and reduce them where they're not needed. That balance will help you sound both confident and approachable, and your listeners will stay focused on your ideas, not on the habits in your delivery.
Finally, let's talk about skill number 10, the ability to ask strategic questions and seek clarification. A lot of people think asking questions means you're unsure or weak, but in reality, it's a powerful communication skill. When you ask thoughtful questions, you show that you're listening, that you care about the topic, and that you're confident enough to guide the conversation. For example, saying, "Could you clarify what you meant by that?" is a clear way to get more information without sounding confused. It actually strengthens your presence in the conversation.
Yes, and asking the right kind of questions also helps avoid miscommunication, which is a common problem for English learners. Let's say someone gives you instructions and you didn't fully catch it. Instead of staying quiet and pretending you understood, it's much better to say something like, "Just to be sure, are you saying that I should submit it today?" This doesn't make you look bad. In fact, it shows that you're being careful and professional. Strategic questioning keeps the conversation clear and avoids mistakes caused by assumptions.
And another great thing about clarification is that it gives you a natural way to stay involved in discussions, especially when the topic gets a bit technical or unfamiliar. If someone uses a word you don't know, you can ask, "I'm not familiar with that term. Could you explain it?" That kind of curiosity not only helps you understand the topic better, but it also encourages the other person to open up more. Good communication isn't about always knowing everything. It's about knowing how to stay engaged even when things get tricky.
Exactly. And sometimes it's not about misunderstanding, it's just about wanting a deeper explanation. You can say things like, "Can you give me an example of what you mean?" or "Could you walk me through that one more time?" These phrases are gentle and respectful, but they help keep the conversation on the same page. They also give you time to process the information and think of your next response. So instead of freezing, you're using your questions to stay in control and keep the flow going.
A lot of fluent speakers do this naturally. They ask for clarity even when they mostly understand. It's a way to make sure they're not missing anything. And for English learners, this habit builds confidence fast. You start feeling more comfortable saying things like, "Are you saying that this part needs to be fixed first?" Or, "So you mean the meeting is at noon, not 1?" These questions remove all doubt and make your communication sharper. It's not just about grammar, it's about being smart with your words.
And honestly, asking questions also shows that you're engaged, not just nodding and agreeing with everything. It tells the other person that you're paying attention, and that makes conversations feel more genuine. You're not just trying to speak better English, you're actually building real connections.
And in professional settings, that can make a huge difference. People respect those who are clear, curious, and willing to ask when something's not fully understood. That's a sign of effective communication, not a weakness.
So, if you want to level up your speaking skills, don't just focus on answers, focus on the quality of your questions too. Make it a habit to ask for clarification when needed or to follow up with a thoughtful question. It gives you time to think, keeps the conversation smooth, and shows that you're fully present. These little tools might seem small, but they create a big difference in how people perceive your English skills, and they help you become a more confident communicator overall.
Absolutely. So, as we wrap up today's episode, just remember fluency isn't about speaking nonstop. It's about speaking smartly, asking when you're not sure, and using every conversation as a learning opportunity. These 10 communication skills we've shared are simple, practical, and powerful if you use them consistently. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the Speak Up Podcast. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and keep practicing every day. We'll be back with more helpful content soon.